Listen to me. Mages control the world. The church, they're hiding it from us. They're covering up what happened in Fuyuki.
fatezero is the only Fate anime worth watching in a sea of mid-garbage. No, I'm just kidding. Prisma Ilia is peak, and I'll hear nothing less. Do you love ancient history? Have you ever been thrown out of a museum for intimate misconduct with a relic? Or wondered if you could kill Gandalf with a 1911? Then you're in the right place. This is a bloody war between summoned legends, with the ability to reshape reality on the line, where death is standard and every means possible is used to cave in your opponent's skull first and crawl over their corpse to reach ultimate power. So yes, this doesn't sound like Fate at all. Where's my cooking house husband? What happened to Padaru? The endless Saber face works? The poorly written hentai? Where is Nekoark? Well, you see, Zero is just built different. No, seriously, the author isn't even the same guy. Allow me to demonstrate. It's 1994, midnight, in Fuyuki City, and a serial killer is about to summon his servant, Caster, and begin the Fourth Beast Games. As he finishes marking the blood runes onto the floor, he turns from the couple he just murdered and smiles at their son, bound on the ground, and says, "If a demon comes, he might be really hungry. Could you be a good boy and get eaten?" It was at this moment I knew I wouldn't need to go to the island. So crack open your world history textbook, brush up on utilitarian principles, and let's discover together at what point this becomes too much and you go watch Bocce the Rock instead. fatezero is the anime equivalent of a biblical story on crack, and we're firmly in the Old Testament. A foundational work set before the actual foundational work. But don't worry, we'll get into the inferior version later. No! We follow Kiritsugu, part-time dad, part-time mercenary, full-time hero, who double-taps wizards with a Beretta. Wait, no, sorry. We actually follow Saber, summoned King Arthur, but significantly hotter.
Nice.
Here to claim a chance to save those she failed to... No, actually, the story follows Kotomine Kirei, a poor priest whose wife just died. But luckily enough, gets a new friend that grooms him. But what was he expecting when he dresses like that? Is there even a main character here? No, there is not. Also, you're lacking 12 pages of lore. But at this point, can you be called an anime fan if the basics of the Fate world hasn't been explained to you via hentai osmosis? Look, just imagine a less incompetent and significantly less child-friendly Harry Potter universe. Alright, I'll get into the lore. Basically, a hidden parallel society of mages exist, held together by a loose set of rules to keep the non-magical world largely unaware of the supernatural. Through carefully kept bloodlines, jealously held esoteric knowledge, and subtle influence. These mages have woven themselves so tightly into the bedrock of our economies, governments, and systems, that the destruction of a city in a ritualistic war between 7 ancient heroes and the violent death of thousands is nothing to cover up. That the Vatican not only knows of them, but works with them. That our true history has been rewritten to their benefit. That power beyond our understanding exists only for a select few. That no matter what you know, no matter how hard you scream it, nothing will change. That you're just cattle to their whims, pawns to be traded in factional power struggles, or fuel to their occult ambition. Yeah, don't worry, I also had a hard time suspending my disbelief. God, could you imagine if that was real?
And slowly you come to realize
The mages keep summoning the Jesus Sippy Cup and killing each other for it, because none of them are clever enough to wish for more wishes. And it also requires blood sacrifice, because blood really is fuel. Zero started as a series of books and was adapted to anime in 2011, both written and directed by Gen Urobuchi. And if that name means nothing to you, well, get ready. This man could write the menu to a bombed out McDonald's in Laos during a civil war, and I'd still walk through a minefield to get there. the man knows how to write. To name a few, Madoka Magica, Psycho Pass, and Saya Goddamn no Uta! Which, coincidentally, if you have seen my past video on, might just give you an idea of what to expect. Oh my god, there's so much room for suffering! But when it's all boiled down, Zero has a rather simple setup. The Eldritch Horror with power over reality in the guise of a cup chooses 7 masters who summon 7 servants. Rider, Caster, Lancer, Assassin, Archer, Berserker, and Saber. Men and women whose marks upon history persist far beyond their mortal incarnations.
I am Arthur, King of the Britons.
Bound by magical contract and tethered to their master, they must defeat their rivals, and in that process swell the strength of the ritual, until only a single chance at ultimate power finally descends. But before all that, remember to beat that like button until you have to pay alimony to the Patreon, and always watch my videos on repeat with your son during the twice yearly court-appointed visits, as you attempt to ignore the growing distance between the child you once knew and the stranger growing up next to you. Animated by Ufotable before the staff was kidnapped and forced to make 8 seasons of Demon Slayer, Zero was made to exacting detail. By which I mean, they got the guns right! 10 out of 10 best anime! Guntism once again proves the mark of quality animation. Now, I know a lot of people dislike the idea of modern weapons and tactics being used in any fantasy setting, but those people have brain damage and deserve the rope. Zero fully explores how a resourceful man with a suitcase full of claymores and 300 Win Mag would deal with Harry Potter. And goddamn, I support it. 500 kilos to Hogwarts. But that's not to say guns simply clear, or turn the whole thing into a cheat anime where Kiritsugu goes around aura farming while dabbing on wizards with the Glock 17. Go watch Gate for that. Instead, it's a parallel path to force expression, but not an inherently superior one. Intelligence, blackmail, traps, tricks, assassination, alliances, and betrayals. Such strategies define Zero's fights more than concepts like pure power. Layered over the spectacle of every battle and scene like taut piano wires, as every master seeks to leverage the perfect killing strike. Nothing is fair, no fight between equals allowed, only victory, and in death, the end of your ambition. Be it via cursed ritual magic, the thrust of a spear, or 24 car bombs going off in the underground parking of a residential building. Oh god, they're destroying the city! Oh no man, don't worry, that's just low-income housing. Also, this. God, that's so cool. Before aurafarming.mov peeked across the room solo-levelingly, this is what ancient aura-seeking weebs jacked off to in their ancestral hermitage, while fairy tale fans chased unaccompanied minors in the park. But of course, with enough money, anything can be peak visually. But where mentally deranged Star Wars sycophants have nothing left but to shovel Disney slop into their mouth, then cry and cum when they see a red lightsaber, Zero's battles have substantially more narrative and emotional weight. And yes, that includes the car park deathmatch with the CGI Dark Souls 2 reference, who fused with a 50 caliber rifle. And his master, Karyamato, is you, probably. In any other anime, Karya would be the hero, struggling forward for the most just, endearing, and understandable thing in anime: children and their hot mother.
Damn, boy!
However, this is not any other anime, and as such, nobody is protected by the power of plot armor, and though I bet he wishes he was. A former mage who ran away from his reasonable and kind father, Karya seeks the Grail to save an innocent life, and in a way, rebel against the warped culture of magedom at large, who primarily see magic, its peak, and any method to get there, as a pure good to be put before anything else, including their own children. Karya is part of the Matto bloodline, whose spellcraft revolves around putting worms in their urethra, and are one of the 3 original families who started this whole Fortnite ritual, the others being the gem mages of the Toesuckers and the flesh crafters of the Ironsburns. These 3 are the seeded contestants as far as the war goes, with everyone else having to earn their position by somehow convincing the Grail they're worthy, or would just be a lot of fun to have around.
Get it!
Compared to Carrier's My Dad Sucks crusade, Tokiomi Tosaka is a true traditional right-wing mage. A Japanese man with a fetish for English nobility, circa 1876, hot wife haver, and loving father to one of his children. Also a severe alcoholic. However, he is serious, having prepared long and carefully for this war, studying his opponents, teaming on the down low, co-opting the impartial judge, and tactfully gifting one of his children to an old man. Alongside Kenneth, a powerful mage from London who brings a new standard to the phrase blood purity, they function as the most mage-like of the 7 masters, with the rest falling somewhere between the man with enough bullets to start World War III and a baby-faced university student. But what's more interesting than the masters alone is the complicated relationship between them and their servants. One which is not as Pokemon slave logic as you might first assume. A king to his subject, a knight to their lord, or a spirit to be manipulated, a tool to be wielded, a mad monster to be unleashed. This is where Zero and much of Fate truly shines. It's not just a war between the idea of legendary figures, but actual people, with all their flaws and regrets. Stories we see as history long finished, to them are real and evolving. They are individuals from vastly different times and cultures, possessing morality and desires sometimes far removed from our own. Conflict between master and servant was inevitable. And then there's the bro team. Caster and his master Renosuke are entirely uninterested in the Sippy Cup War, instead celebrating the truest of loves, bromance. Amazingly, through time and space, a Frenchman and the off-brand casting of an NTR manga find in each other a kindred spirit. They like the same music, they watch the same shows, kidnap the same children, and even both like square dancing. Sadly, others get in the way of filming their toxic buddy cop movie, and in a hilarious case of mistaken identity, Caster mistakes Saber for another Saber. Even fate is casting shade on fate. All this leads to a series of wacky hijinks, involving F-15s and comparisons to Resident Evil. But every show has their comic relief. Caster, or Gilles de Rais, historically was a French knight who fought in the 100-Year War alongside Joan of Arc to punish the English for the crime of being English. Inspired by this holy woman, he decided to sacrifice a few hundred children in a cult ritual, though his crimes may have been embellished by his political rivals. Thankfully, we no longer live in a world where sacrificing children in hedonistic ritual is common practice amongst the upper class. Now, I won't go into all the masters or their servants in true depth.
Bitch, are you for real?
Partially because that would make this video 47 minutes long, and partially because I think you shouldn't know everything. Yes, I am spoiler gatekeeping a nearly 2-decade-old anime, itself a prequel to a wildly popular visual novel. Shoot me. But do so while .0 plays, please. The heavy lifting done by the music is not to be underestimated. When I called Zero a biblical story on crack, I wasn't lying, with its sweeping epic choir songs that play as if it were a retelling of a legendary event, a tale we should all know. And given where you should have started the Fate series, that's exactly what Zero is. But of course, you already watched Fate Stay Night, didn't you? You played the 80-hour visual novel, right? You didn't just skip it, did you? Because most people did. Now, a history degree is not required to enjoy Zero, particularly given the series' overall reinterpretation of the great man of history theory. But knowledge never hurts, and context helps not only for Zero, but the growing list of alternative Grail War stories. Personally, I'm excited for Fate Stay Yugoslavia, where 7 Balkan war criminals fight for dominance in the ruins of Kosovo. I mean, we already have anime girl Mussolini, why not War Crime Thunderdome? I am Adolf Hitler! But Zero is quite distinct from its subsequent siblings, despite being the vibe blueprint most of them attempt to copy. And that is not to insult those stories, but is a testament to Zero's impact. Just think about this. Zero has significant parts where characters just talk. No fights, no action, no jingling keys, just words. And it's enthralling. These characters are people we can't take our eyes off, whose lives, tragedies, and words envelop us more than any glowing sword can alone. There are precious few stories that can achieve this, and even less that survive to proper adaptation. Alright, bit too serious? Clown nose back on. Local man takes all the world's evils upon his back. Breaks spine, or would have, if he wasn't stubborn as all hell. When you were a kid, what did you want to be? Police officer? Actress? Niche micro-celebrity? Or maybe a hero? Someone who saves the world from all possible evil. The bright figure shielding the innocent, sword held tight against an encroaching darkness. Adulthood is realizing the endless nature of that conflict. Understanding it is human to draw lines and weapons in blood. That conflict itself is an inseparable part of us. Maturity is then knowing what you can do and what you cannot do about it. Emiya Kiritsugu rejected this. A child forced to face reality too early, too harshly, who, in the heat of the moment, made a choice, one that defined a life to come. Because Emiya Kiritsugu, magus assassin, patricidal mercenary, and hired master of the Einsburns, is cursed with an extraordinary talent for killing, and worse, clarity of purpose. Kiritsugu puts his thumb on the scale, always choosing the best option to practically reduce suffering and meaningless death in a world swamped by both. Led by cold utilitarian math, he does not hesitate. He knows the price of inaction, the price of letting emotion make choices. And more than anything, he knows the face of the girl who still haunts his dreams decades later. To him, the Grail is the solution to an unwinnable war, a chance at a world without the need for someone like him. For that, oceans of blood are but a down payment, as morality and ethics are for people who have not seen the corpse-ridden mud of a battlefield, burned husks of villages, or madness of those with unbridled ambition and power. But Kiritsugu is no cold killer, even if he can act the part. Alone in the arms of his wife, he breaks down. He struggles with the knowledge his daughter is doomed to an early grave, her weight hardly more than the handgun he uses to execute people. And both of them, his only family, are tools born of Einsburn fleshmancy, homunculi, parodies of humanity wrought with magic by an arrogant mage bloodline he should detest, yet joins hands with, because any cost to obtain the Grail's power includes his principles, life, and anything else he can give. Kiritsugu is one of the most interestingly written characters, caring so much for others, for even the abstraction of others, that he kills his own emotions, and in the greatest of karmic jokes, often those he cares for most. And you know what? I get it. I'd crash out too if I fumbled the island girl baddie. And standing on the opposite side of him is Kotomine Kirei, a ruthless Vatican executioner trained specifically to kill mages. Kirei was raised on the hardline doctrine of the church, which he abides without thought or pause. He moves as ordered, and excels at everything he touches, with a sharp mind wired via the precepts of others. When his father asks him to join the Grail War as a pawn, to manipulate the outcome in a form beneficial to the Vatican, he does not question. Thus, at the behest of his father, he becomes a mage's apprentice, learns from the men he once killed, studies their methods, learns their spellcraft, and excels once more, and again takes a new set of rules to layer upon his mind, to tell him how to act. Because the truth is, Kotomine Kirei has nothing. A deep emptiness is all he feels. True desire, pleasure, satisfaction, sadness. He has none of those. Nothing but the rules of others to tell him how he should act, how he should respond. Everything else is shackled, warped, and hidden from him, leaving only wisps of human emotion. And in that murky haze, knowing he is somehow different from everyone else, he is handed a report on his next target. A killer, a hired gun, an assassin of mages and men through bullets, poisons, and explosives, with no care for the innocents caught in the crossfire. Someone like him. Or so it seems. For his part, Emiya Kiritsugu clocks Kirei for what he really is in but a moment. A dangerous, unpredictable weapon. And a mirror to himself. And good God, their fight scene!
Special.
In a series with literal gods, mythical monsters, and legendary heroes by the bucketful, the greatest fight scene, pants down, is two dudes with a handful of knives and a pocket full of bullets. And it's not even close. While I stand by my position that Zero has no central protagonist, the duet these two perform comes close. With Saber third-wheeling in a nearby hallway. I know what some of you are typing very fast right now. The cover doesn't count for who the protagonist is. Everyone knows hot women get center stage in the advertisement. It's just weeb science. See these shows? See all these women? Yeah, main character's a man. God, will the male discrimination ever end? I hope not. However, there is one golden misogynist from 2700 BC who would disagree. The king of heroes, Gilgamesh. The demigod king of Uruk, the first lord of humanity, a returned being from the age of myth and antiquity, who amuses himself by grooming a wayward priest, or, depending on your point of view, helping Kirei to find himself. Gilgamesh is a villain, one more popular than most heroes, a tyrant whose greed is insatiable, a corrupting influence, a lord above lords, a super misogynist. With so many incarnations throughout the Fate universe, people argue over which one they prefer. Or, in women's case, which one of them they desire to be enslaved by. But for me, it's Zero's. Yes, he would kill you for looking at him, and is a human-formed exaltation to greed and excess. But in the rare moments when the sneer falls from his lips, and something akin to respect glimmers in his eyes, I can't help but appreciate the Gap Moe. Gilgamesh is one of 3 summoned kings for the Grail War, all of whom get smashed together in the greatest of midnight drinking sessions that I won't talk about. Screw you. Go watch the damn show yourself and find out why this one specific episode involving copious amounts of wine drives people to write essays in the YouTube comment section. So, instead of drunk monarchs, let's talk about everyone's favourite surrogate father figure.
Abandon reason, no only war.
But with a smile. A D&D character who pumped charisma so hard, he conquered most of the known world, plus his boy wife Waver.
Why are we still here?
Nah, I'm just kidding. They're actually a bro team. Parenthesis, the nice ones. With their master-servant relationship being unironically the healthiest one in the series. Ryder is Alexander the Great. Iskandir, the long shadow cast upon any would-be conqueror, whose undefeated phalanxes swept through Persia in the late 4th century BC, carving an empire from the Adriatic to India. A Macedonian king, crowned through blood, iron, and the dreams of countless men who flocked to his banner. He subjugated, conquered, and laid waste ancient empires with a grin, shifting borders and cultures of the era so much we needed to change the name. In short, the kind of man who defines history. And this legend among legends was summoned by a magical nerd upset nobody wanted to sit with him at wizard school. Though don't worry, despite the jokes, Waver's pretty peak. Iskander seeks the Grail for only one thing. Another chance. Another shot at that distant horizon. To grin as his heart thumps with the anticipation of battle. To have true comrades at his sides and worthy enemies laid before him. That, or he just really wants to go swimming in the ocean. The final king is Saber, Arthur Pendragon, the mythical lord of Britain, slayer of Saxons and enjoyer of
Having a cheeky pint with the lads down the pub after some footy. Simple as.
Now, do you need to know the full legend of King Arthur to enjoy Zero? As long as you know the general strokes, you'll be fine. Bunch of knights, big flashy sword, tart in the lake, London butter knife epidemic, and finally, Arthur gets stabbed by her gender-fluid chud son, attempting NTR with Guinevere, the cheating trophy wife. NANI? Man, tough life. More than any other servant, Saber is unable to move on from her failures in life. Eternally trapped by her regrets and undying duty. The moral flip side to Kiritsugu, Saber rigidly acts within a knight's code of honor and chivalry as she seeks the Grail, refusing to compromise her ideals even in death, even after seeing the results such perfection led to. Of the three rulers, Arthur, or Artoria, was the most benevolent towards her subjects. A lord who strived to create the ideal kingdom to a fault, and fault it did. Each ruler in Zero has their own form of kingship, and none of them are wrong. It's easy for us in the modern era to say Saber is the one true king, and declare the others merely flavors of tyrannical, but reality rarely conforms to idealism. Divine right, the conqueror, the benevolent lord. From the lowest tribal chieftain to the heights of ancient Babylon, our societies have been moved forward, more often than not, by the whims, passions, and ruthlessness of those who fashioned themselves absolute rulers among men. And for all their historical abuses, both perceived and real, it is their land, history, and bones our civilization stands upon. So what exactly am I trying to say here?
これがアメリカンジョークです。
Basically, Zero has a lot to talk about, even in the margins between colourful death matches. Hey, a segue! Here's a fun question. How does Fate-Stained Knight, the canonical continuation to Zero, treat this tragic void seeking nigh unreachable redemption? Insert visual novel scene here of Saber learning to swim in pool, arse poised slightly out of water with a look of mild concern. Yeah, they're kinda different. Mr. Arthur is, for all intents and purposes, a different character in both Zero and Fate-Stay Night. Less the tragic king from an Arthurian Elden Ring DLC, and more a girl unaccustomed to kindness being one-shot by the first man to smile at her. But beyond making Stay Night fans angry for the fun of it, the real point I wish to stress here is that Stay and Zero, despite their shared story elements, are apples and oranges. They will never be fairly compared, as they are fundamentally different stories made by vastly different authors. Yet equally, their intrinsic narrative connection means they cannot be separated, and will be forever stacked against one another. It is their fate.
He said it! He said it!
And saying all this is not just to make myself a hypocrite, but to lead directly into what I must now discuss. Let's address Zero's biggest flaw. The first episode, Holy Info Dump. Magic, mages, the clock tower, bloodline eugenics, the church's heretic-killing assassins, the bug wizard, Jesus' knockoff sippy cup, history of the Grail Wars, summoning, servants, catalyst, intrigue, strategy, characters, child trafficking, references, more references, the most pointlessly elaborate printer ever made, command seals, factions, these two guys walking in a circle refusing to talk like normal people. In parenthesis, it's also a reference. What the actual fuck is happening? 47 minutes, split between multiple POVs across time skips spent primarily in dusty studies and classrooms. Hell, I felt like I was in a classroom. Or so the utterly uninitiated who I kidnapped and forced to watch this episode told me. Personally, I really liked it. But for most people, going in raw is like reading /fanfiction about Dumbledore screwing Dobby in his magical closet. If you don't know who these people are, the world, or the carnal tension developed over 5 books, you're not going to understand why Dobby starts crying when given Albus's cutlag in chapter 12. So yes, while it's possible to suggest Fate Zero to a time traveler from before 9/11 who thinks a saber is a curved pirate sword, it'll be a hard sell. And so...
Where did that bring you? Back to me.
You might need context. Might. Because, as I've mentioned, many still don't bother. Which is also the biggest reason a rabid subsection of Fate-Stay Night fans passionately hate Zero, with so many people entirely bypassing their beloved 80-hour erotic visual novel, simultaneously ruining its major narrative twists and thematically poisoning any future playthrough. Now, I don't relish shitting on angry Stay Night fans, but as someone who also has an exceedingly bad anime adaptation as the poster child for their personality-defining Stockholm Syndrome-inducing favorite 100-hour visual novel, I can empathize.
You were the chosen one!
But flatly put, Zero is worth your time. And regardless of how you get there and who screams racial slurs at you for that choice, you should watch it. Though of course, your own preference for fictional suffering will play the biggest role in your ultimate enjoyment. As much like a man with a sub-67 IQ attempting long-term planning, I understand some things are just not for everyone. Especially if your idea of suffering is that one episode in Nyon Nyon Byori where Renge's friend goes back to Tokyo during summer vacation. Wait a minute, I actually take that all back, that was really sad. But seriously, make no mistake, Zero is a Greek tragedy. It is about the fragility of ideals before the crucible of total war. A place where a sneer might find you better odds than sorrow. Where hedonism gains purchase as heroics become mired in contradiction and failure. But that's just scratching the subjective surface. Be it a thrilling action series, a deep dive into the human psyche, or just a contextual addendum to other shows, Zero is a lot of things to a lot of people. But what is it to me? Brutal, raw, and unforgiving. Saber shackled to her ideals, even in the face of unassailable reality. Kiritsugu's practical evil in search of victory. A man self-condemned to a life of unending suffering. Iskandia racing for that far horizon. Kirei lost amidst a passionless sea. And the divine king of Urk beside him with a smile and a path forward. There is no such thing as a perfect anime. But from where I'm standing, we can get damn close. And to think, this was the version after the cuts. Remember to post your hot take on Fate in the comments for everyone to yell about, and go support me over on Patreon. Your help enables more of these stupidly overtuned YouTube videos on stuff everyone's already moved on from. I also need meth. Please and thank you. Links in the description. I know it's been a few years since you covered GFL, but do you have any plans of doing a rough cover of the story? Kind of. I'll review GFL again, focusing on Exilium probably, but a full-on beat-to-beat story summary is a disservice to the experience. Just do what I recommended, and watch the cutscenes at the gym. You'll find the time. To what extent do you believe cutting, changing, or adding content while adapting a story is acceptable? That's a video topic all its own. But, brief rules. Zero censorship, always work directly with the author for any changes, and weed out anyone who speaks fluent corpo from creative decision making. It'll be mostly up from there. Nikkei video when detective. When I'm up to date on the story, it's difficult when I can only pay attention during the refractory period. Oh, and before I forget, Lancer just wants to scrub toilets and work in the cotton fields, and they just won't let him!